model, the camera position, the light, the scene as a whole, and then the environment. So here in the environment, we're going to shut off the IBL, the image-based light. If we leave that turned on, when we render this out, it's going to come out much brighter than we expect it to be. That's not what I want to do here for this particular project, so we're shutting off the IBL. And now let's begin playing with the light, because part of the reason this is so blown out is because we're just flooding a ton of light right into the front of our object. So let's start with infinite light number 1, and you can to be. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. We're going to select our model, the glove skeleton object here, and now the coordinates that appear in the properties panel have to do with our model. All I'm really going to change is the y-axis. I just want to tilt our space person over toward the left a little bit, so I'm going to go -45. Voila, just like that. And the beauty of the 3D object is the 3D element is going to interact with those lights that we established. See, the blue light is still outlining the right side. The pink light is still outlining the left side perfectly. We got this heavy shadow on the front, just the 3D. This is part of the reason that I well, not even part of the reason. This is the reason that I duplicated the original 3D layer, because essentially, if we want to change this now, we need to go back to the original 3D layer. This might as well be a flat piece of artwork. We can position it wherever we want. I am going to go edit a free transform. Actually, I'm going to right click, commit that change, and we're going to drag this down beneath our 3D model. In fact, I'll rename this 3D model just so we know. Background layer here, I will delete because we don't need that anymore. And for our Adobe stock here, we don't need it really connected to the cloud. I'm going to right click and I'll choose embed linked image. Voila. And I'm going to duplicate it, Command or Control J. Now what I want to do is blur this quite severely. I'm going to shut off the top nebula here, and I'm going to work with the bottom one filter, blur. Let's try blurring this like 100 pixels and see what it looks like. So we'll go 100 pixels. Look at this interesting conundrum we have here. Really, really bad banding all over the image. It looks really bad. It would look horrible as a finished effect. Here's how we combat it. We're going to temporarily go image mode 16 bits per channel, and we will apply the blur in 16-bit mode, filter, blur, Gaussian blur. This is going to allow us to be perfect there along the bottom edge of our model. And we can then go in and freeform it if we want. Clean up the fingers a little bit, clean up down here a little bit, and do whatever you want in terms of making it look just the way you want it to look. And there we've added the first piece of that effect. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just speeding the video up, and I'm adding maybe 2 or 3 more pink streaks like this, and then also 2 or 3 blue streaks as well. It's real fast and easy, but instead of watching me do it for the next 20 minutes, go in there and just try to blend it together just a little bit more so it looks a little more realistic. And those little dots, they're going to do a nice job of helping us just make sure it looks blended, at least a little bit more blended than it did just a second ago. Now, before we go further, I'm going to zoom out. I'm looking at the background. I see like some almost reddish colors here. I want to try to make the color of the background a little bit more uniform now that we kind of have our space model in place. So above the nebula, the space layer, let's create a new layer, and let's call this color. I'm going to set it to the blend mode of color, which is going to allow whatever color I paint on this layer, it's going to colorize the layer underneath. I'm going to just work with a large brush here. I'm just using my square bracket keys to make the brush huge or small or whatever. And then I'm just going to sample the pinks and blues that I have. So I'll say like, hey, let's add some pink over here, right? Maybe we'll add a little pink up here, just make things interesting. Maybe a little bit more down here. Then we'll sample the blue. We want to make sure we make that red area much more blue. Same thing over here. We'll make this blue. Maybe add a little blue. I don't really like the blue in the corner. Maybe a little blue up here. And now that we have all this color, see all the color blobbed into the color layer, it's a little bit too harsh. So we'll go filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Maybe about 200 pixels is good. We'll hit OK. And then we can reduce the opacity a little bit just to sort of start blending things back together. It's distribution and monochromatic. That's important, monochromatic. You know what? Actually, the colorful might actually look interesting. Let's try the colorful. I haven't tried this yet. Let's try it. We're going to go with the colorful noise. See all those different colors? And we'll set this to the blend mode of soft light. Just because of the nature of what we're doing, this very futuristic, glitchy, almost looking effect, it might be interesting. And we'll reduce the opacity here. Let's try about 40%. All right, so now that we have this, we're going to sharpen this up a little bit. So we're going to merge all of our layers to a new layer, Command-Shift-Option-E, that is going to be Control-Shift-Alt-E on the PC. And I'm going to convert this layer to black and white, so Control-Shift or Command-Shift-U. And I'm going to duplicate this layer, Command or Control J. A lot of little hotkeys there. All right, so the top layer we're going to call High Pass 1, and the bottom layer we're going to call High Pass, you guessed it, 2. So High Pass 1 is going to be more of a fine sharpening we're going to apply to our character. We'll go Filter, Other, High Pass, And I'll probably go not with 10 pixels, but more like 2, maybe 1.5. I think 2 will be fine. And we'll set this to the blend mode soft light. Select high pass 2. We will go filter, other, high pass. And here we're going to do, yeah, about 10 pixels, just a giant, ridiculous amount of mid-tone clarity punch, and set this to soft light. Kind of destroying our effect. So we're going to reduce the opacity to like 35%. And for our high pass 1 layer, we will also, what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to select the mask, and I will go elliptical marquee, and I'm going to create a, well, maybe not even a huge elliptical marquee over the center object, just something like that. And then go select modify feather, and we'll feather this, I don't know, 300 pixels, something like that. It's going to say, look, it's such a huge feather, you're not going to be able to even see your selection. That's fine. And then on this color lookup table, I'm going to hit Command or Control I, which should fill that area with black, but you can see it's so subtle. 300 pixels for our selection is too much. So I'm going to go select deselect, even though we can't see the selection, it was there. Let's create another selection, and maybe this time we'll go select modify feather and try like 100. So there we go. That's a little bit more like it. Select that mask. We have black as our foreground color. We can hit Option Delete. That's Alt Backspace on the PC, and that will fill that area with black. Maybe I'll do that a couple more times just to really intensify the effect. Command or Control D to deselect. Now that's a little bit too noticeable, right? The difference between the incredibly saturated blue and then all of a sudden we have basically gray out here. So what I try to do is go like Filter, Distort, Wave, and we'll try to give this a little, just a little glitchy looking effect. We'll go with like 3 generators, a wavelength of 10 and 35, minimum maximum is great, amplitude 15 and 50, perfect, and a scale of 5% versus 1%, perfect. I'm using the square type as well. I'll hit OK, and you can see we've got this little glitchy effect we've added. Kind of interesting as a standalone effect. Maybe something where we want to duplicate up this mask here. So I'll select that mask, hold down Alt or Option, drag it, and drop it on the layer. And it just gets rid of some of the glitchiness on top of our character, but preserves the glitchiness out here in the rest of this layer. Kind of cool. I don't know. You have a lot of options at this point for what you want or what you could do. But the point is, we've gone from really just our single 3D model created with Adobe Fuse, imported into Photoshop, and we've created this cool, I don't know, dragging, particle-y, glitchy effect in Photoshop